Hey, welcome to your readings for the week of September 3rd to September 9th. Actually, today, as I'm recording, is September 3rd, which means I'm technically late. I like to get these out really early and have it all done before it's supposed to come out. And this weekend was just not the weekend for that. There was so much stuff going on, including very fun rock star party. So, funny thing, I totally woke up feeling hungover like after the party, and I haven't drank since I was like 30. It's been like 15 years. So, I definitely wasn't hungover, but I also know that being surrounded as an empath, being surrounded by a lot of people, if I'm not grounded, if I'm not bubbled the whole entire time, especially later on at night when I need to be more aware of that and work harder because my energy level is already getting low. Oh, it's like all them people just zap that energy right out of me. That's totally how it feels. So, if you guys have experienced something similar to that, it's not just you. You just have to protect yourself a little bit more than you normally would when it comes to crowded situations, even if it's a situation that your energy totally resonates with. Like, this one, I mean, it does. I'm not a party girl anymore. I don't stay up late. I mean, I do stay up late. That's not true. I don't stay up partying all night long. Um, as a rule, generally, but that's not really the point, you know? The point is that you are making sure that you are protecting your energy and not necessarily picking up on all the energies around you. And it's not because you don't want to pick up bad energies. These were all older people. There's a lot of health issues to pick up on. There's a lot of emotional issues to pick up on. There's a plethora of stuff to pick up on. So it's really important to protect yourself. That's my lesson from last week that I am passing on to you guys. If you're even watching this part of it, I don't know. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and get the readings done here so that they can be uploaded so that you guys can see them. And we're going to start as we always do with Darcy. We have interesting stuff actually is taking place this week in Taurus. And there is this big thing about 6 planets being retrograde. And oh my God, it's going to be this horrendous thing, right? And the funny thing is that Jupiter goes retrograde today, and Venus comes out of its retrograde today. So technically, for like a couple of hours at some point today, all 6 planets are going to be retrograde, but literally for a matter of hours. And then we go back to 5. That's still a lot of retrogrades. And that's 2 retrogrades in Taurus. So Jupiter's retrograde is actually the one that may be causing some problems for you if problems occur, if that makes sense. And we also have the moon kicking off the week, moving in today, as a matter of fact, Sunday, into your sign as well, and moving into conjunction with both Jupiter and Uranus. Uranus is already retrograde. Uranus retrogrades, I think, are a little bit easier for fixed signs because fixed signs don't like change, and Uranus is constantly forcing you to change. So having that energy kind of calm down for a few months is probably going to be really, really good for you. Actually, to be honest with you, I think it'll be a good break for you guys. We have a couple of things going on here. Of course, the moon's influence at the beginning of the week here, specifically Sunday and Monday, moves into conjunction with both Uranus and Pluto. Oddly enough, Uranus and Jupiter, not Pluto. Jupiter is squared with Venus. So as they're opposing in their retrogrades there, one's coming out and one's going in, they're also having a challenge with each other. And the good thing about Venus is retrograde being over is that Venus is Taurus's ruling planet, so that does have an effect on you even if Venus isn't in your sign. But of course, Venus is continuing this challenge here with Jupiter. Jupiter's focus on the moon on Monday, because the moon's perfectly in conjunction with Jupiter at this time, is on your day-to-day schedule. It's kind of really on the cusp of your relationships and your day-to-day schedule, but it's more into the day-to-day schedule. And Uranus is bringing relationships into it, into the mix anyway. So it's kind of a mixture of both. And Venus is all about your long-term goals. So as a challenge, Jupiter's all about expansion. Basically, this means you just can't seem to find time in your schedule for anything else right now, which is not surprising. So it does create some relationship issues, when people are just like, how come you never have any time for me? Am I not important? Blah, blah, blah. Remember, we're going through a Virgo Mercury retrograde this week also. So everything is going to be all about the individual, right? There's a lot of it's all about me, what about me kind of communication that's going on anyways. So basically, bottom line with this challenge is a lot of times we set goals. And they're really important to us, and then life happens, and our people kind of get in the way. They need something, they want something, and it's not like they're just all deliberately getting in the way just to get in the way. Again, life happens. The last month and a half, it's been, for me, has been one thing after another, and it's taking me away from my goals every single time. As long as I get back to it, that's what's important. And that's what you have to keep telling yourself. The minute you say, well, I'm never going to get this done because nobody's going to let me do it, is the minute that you decide it's just not worth it to do it anymore. So that's not the direction that you want to go in. And that's what that challenge really is all about. Now, Uranus and Jupiter with the moon, specifically on Monday, do continue to be in a trine with the sun and that retrograde Mercury. So that means that you can kind of use the energy in your favor a little bit, which is good. And both planets are focused on your career. So we are trying to open up time and space to really focus on your career goals, which again, pardon me, you'd think I've been drinking today, but I haven't. It's only 10:30 in the morning. I mean, that would be kind of ridiculous. And I did just say before in the intro that I don't drink anymore. So I have not. But yes, a lot of times you set certain goals, you want to do something. Again, finding the time sometimes is just so difficult. And it's difficult without all of life's challenges coming into it and making it even more complicated in some way, shape, or form. So a little extra patience goes a long way. As far as communication, because Mercury is retrograde, I feel that it is going to work more in your benefit if you don't share your plans rather than if you do share your plans. If there is somebody around there who has a tendency to sabotage your plans, they don't know they can't sabotage. So you do want to look at it that way. It's kind of a sneaky way to do it. But again, Mercury retrograde in Virgo. Virgos are sneaky. So use that energy. It's there to help you, if that makes sense. The moon moves out of your sign by Tuesday, so the emotional elements of things calm down, but everything kind of pretty much stays the same, including this grand sextile with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, which is, of course, going to continue again. And Pluto's influence continues to be on the mind as well. So it's all about how you think about the situation, and your thoughts are powerful. And you have to remember your thoughts are powerful. Your inner monologue is powerful. And the more you pay attention to that, I have a kitty scratching at the door here. The more you pay attention to that, and the more you pay attention to how you're speaking to yourself, how you're speaking about your goals and about what you want to do, the more you can manage your success in terms of manifestation to go along with the work that you're doing. So it seems like a lot going on for you, but it's a lot of really good stuff. And I feel that I've known a lot of Taurus women Um, they're very driven. And I don't see that you're any different than that. So, and although I do feel that there are times where you're not driven at all, like you just would love to take a nap for like a week, and I get that too. But outside of those times, you're very driven, and I feel like this is a very productive week for you. We'll put it that way. So that's what I have for you, Darcy. And I am moving on to Kendra. Funny thing, in case you have read it somewhere, because it is going around on Facebook, of course, and it will probably be going around a lot as we have this post that I saw where, oh my God, 6 planets in retrograde and it's going to be chaos and oh my God, and this and that. And it's so funny as I was doing the horoscopes a couple of days ago. Usually I record everything on the same day, and it just didn't work out that day. So yeah, when I was doing the horoscopes the other day and noticing that Venus does go direct today, Sunday. I'm recording on Sunday. So Venus does go direct today, and Jupiter goes retrograde today. So for a matter of hours, yes, we're going to have 6 planets in retrograde, which is almost all the planets that go retrograde, with the exception of Mars. We've already been there this year, right? Mars only goes retrograde every 2 years anyways. So we were really close to having 6 planets in retrograde, but and actually on a technicality, it is going to happen, but for like a matter of hours today. So the good news is that, first of all, let's not panic about retrogrades, okay? We need retrogrades in order to understand what we're doing. I feel like retrogrades, in a way, when you make a goal, you'll understand this better than anybody. When you make a goal and you're hopping along and then you get to a point where it's like a plateau where you're stuck, right? That's the retrograde. And sometimes that stuck means, let me review where I've been just to make sure that I've got all my T's crossed and my I's dotted, and then I can move forward. So rather than fighting the frustration of how come this isn't happening on my time, take a look back, make sure everything is in place, and then you can easily move forward, if that makes sense. Once the retrograde is over, that's what a retrograde is to me. Anyways, oddly enough, Venus, which goes direct today, is in a square with Jupiter, which goes retrograde today. So not only are they passing each other on the retrograde, but they're still having this challenge amongst the two of them, if that makes sense. And the moon is going to play into this very much this week, as it moves into your sign today on Sunday and continues to be in your sign into Monday. Pretty much gone by Tuesday, though. But I don't see the moon as being a really heavy influence, like an overly emotional influence this time around, because it's really not working on its own. It's working with what's already going on. So in a way, when we look at the moon as being emotions, we automatically assume that it's crying and just having an emotional day or being angry all day. That's not necessarily true. We know there's a plethora of emotions. Sometimes this is about celebration. And I do feel that there is an element of celebration in there for you this week. But let's look at the little challenge first, because we still have this square between Jupiter and Venus. Now, Venus, oddly enough, we were talking about goals. Venus is focused on long-term goals, focusing your creative energy towards those long-term goals. Whereas Jupiter's focus is very much on your day-to-day schedule. So to me, I really take this kitty tail. I really take this as he's been ornery this week with my videos, as just not being able to find enough time in the day to be able to focus on your goals. And that creates a frustration, which stifles your creativity, which makes things really, really frustrating. So there's a couple of different ways that I'm being shown for you to handle this. And that's one, have very strict boundaries on your time. Don't let anybody come in and infiltrate time that they're not supposed to infiltrate. So for instance, you have your work schedule. I really, Really. You have your work schedule and it's already set up. Now, occasionally, things change, but last minute, we need you on this call right now. This is the boundaries. I mean, obviously, you have to make a decision based on the importance of what's going on, but things that seem to be like a waste of your time, there's no reason for that. You're much better off putting that time and that energy towards your other goals, if that makes sense. Now let's get to the good stuff, shall we? Because we continue to have Jupiter and Uranus and the moon the first couple of days as the moon moves into conjunction with these two planets in a trine with the sun and Mercury. And Mercury is still retrograde in Virgo, both of which are focused on your career. This is an interesting layer where you have this creative block in your long-term goals around your career, but all of this really positive energy towards the expansion of your career. And I feel like part of the reason why you don't have a lot of time is because you're uber focused on your career goals. So we may be talking about two different goals. All of your energy is going towards your career goals, but your goals in terms of getting your house together and getting certain things taken care of and fixed, you don't have a lot of time for. And it's not like anybody's making you feel guilty about that. You're making yourself feel guilty about that. So you want to monitor that and just make sure that you're aware of that and not doing it, quite so much, because really, honestly, it's a waste of time and energy. We both know that, right? We also continue to have this grand sextile between Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. Neptune's focus is on the home, oddly enough. That other big thing that you have to focus your time on, while Pluto's focus is on the mind. So it's very much about being mindful of your thought process and how that works. Again, we talked about this before. When you have a major thing in front of you, it's overwhelming, right? And your mind automatically goes to, this is way more than I can handle. But if you look at it and think about it in steps, it's easier to handle. So I feel that Pluto is coming in to really help with that, to make it so that it's less stressful for you. And you really have control over what is stressful for you versus what is not stressful for you. And I know sometimes it's difficult, but it's not impossible, right? You and I both know it's not impossible, although there are times where it's more difficult than others. So that's what I have for you this week. And we are checking in and having a little chit chat this week. So I'm looking forward to that as well. That's what I have for you, my friend. Gonna move on to Jeannette. Yes. Yes, Jeannette. We get some moon action coming into Gemini this week, starting on Tuesday through Wednesday into Thursday. And it's going to be kind of interesting, actually. There are some challenges there, yes, but there's a lot of really good things too. We're going to start off on Tuesday here. The moon is in a square with Saturn. Saturn is retrograde, focused on the home, really all about your responsibilities to the home. The moon is emotional. Gemini is not, and it's focused on relationships. So on one hand, this may amplify some issues that you may be having at home. In terms of not seeing eye to eye around specific responsibilities towards the home, if that makes sense. And that is frustrating. And I know you're over it and you don't want to be having this conversation anymore. We're in a Mercury retrograde. Mercury is your ruling planet. What does that tell you? It's time to change the way you communicate, because clearly it's the way that you're communicating now isn't fixing the problem, right? It's exasperating the problem. And I'm not saying that you don't know how to talk, okay? Don't go there. I'm not saying that you don't know how to talk. But what I am saying is that we get into patterns and we always react in the same way. And then we always wind up dealing with the same problem over and over and over again. So my kitty cat in here is being a little butthead. Okay. I'm just putting that out there. Okay. He is being a little butthead right now. So yeah, a little bit of a challenge, but let's talk about the moon's grand trine with Pluto and Mars as it's coming into your sign. That's a much better use of your energy. And also moving into a grand sextile with Pluto and Neptune as well. These are two really big helpful aspects. Mars is all about your support system. Pluto is all about the mind and how you think and how that affects things. Neptune is also focused on the home. So, a couple of different things. One, you may be arguing about one responsibility that you may not be taking up right now, but let's open up to all the other things that you are doing to take care of the home, right? Or other things that you have the ability to do now that you can focus on because you can't focus on this particular responsibility right now. It doesn't have to be quite so black and white, is what I'm saying. There are other ways to deal with the situation, and the planets are lining up to kind of sort of help you find that solution, if that makes sense. As we move into Wednesday, the moon squares with the sun and that retrograde Mercury, which are in conjunction with each other on this particular day. And their focus is on career. So again, moon in relationships, having an issue with career, this could play out a couple of different ways. One, there's a little bit of a problem within a relationship that you have around a career opportunity. And it may kind of cause a panic in you, like, oh my God, this avenue is done. And no, it's Mercury retrograde. Things happen, delays happen, people start acting kind of weird. Especially Virgos, because it's really directly affecting them. And I have heard about a lot of people who are Virgos that are having a really hard time with this. So extra patience is always good, number one, especially during a Mercury retrograde. Remember, Mercury is your ruling planet. So it doesn't matter if it's in Gemini or not. It's always going to affect you in some way. I mean, it affects everybody, but it definitely affects the signs that it rules more so than any of the other signs. The other thing is, what's interesting about this is that I feel like there's an element of panic to it. Like, before you know all the details, you're already panicking. And that's not necessarily helpful. It's never helpful, right? So it's really important. And because the moon continues to be in a trine with Mars, Mars is a very energetic, aggressive energy. That was so weird. That's going towards your support system. So you have this immense support system. You always have, right? Talk it out with somebody before you panic and make a decision that may not work in your favor. Part of that trine actually is a grand sextile, not necessarily a trine, because Venus is also a part of it, and Venus is very much focused on your long-term goals. I really feel like this whole thing that's going on here with you is showing you that a little bit of organization goes a long way. Now, I'm not saying you're not organized, but I am saying you're a Gemini. So you're probably thinking about 20 different things at any given time. That is not a very organized energy. It actually overwhelms you and nothing ever gets done. And that's kind of not what you want to be focusing on this week. You want to focus your energy on making sure that you follow through with your goals, making sure that you follow through with your responsibilities, making sure that you follow through with whatever you said you were going to do, if that makes sense. And I know some days are harder than others to do that. And that's okay. You can have a day where you're like, I'm not responsible and I'm not, and that's fine. Just make sure the rest of the days are a little bit more productive, if that makes sense. And then as we get into Thursday, the moon's square with Neptune is actually pretty interesting. The moon is now focused on finances, and Neptune is focused on the home. So we're talking specifically looking at and possibly not having the money to be able to fix something, add something that your home needs, purchase something that would make things easier, that you can organize better, or something like that. But you're creative and you're crafty and you know stuff. So honestly, I feel like this is something that you can very easily get around, specifically because the moon's trine with Saturn is kind of sort of pointing in that direction, if that makes sense. This is, you don't have to do things the way you've always done them. Sometimes you can change it up, and that's part of your Gemini energy anyways. So why deny yourself that, right? I look at all of our signs as we have traits that are very helpful. And those are the ones that we really want to lean on. Those are the traits that we want to use to help us move forward in some way. And then we have traits that are really not good. Intellectuals, for example, we're so mentally scrambled all the time that we just can't focus on one thing at a time. So it takes work for me to sit down and go, when another thing comes into my brain, to go, no, it's not your time, and bop it out of there, right? So I can continue to focus on what I need to focus on. Otherwise, literally nothing would ever get done. And I've spent a lot of time being mentally scrambled and not getting stuff done. So I know what I'm talking about in this particular sense right here. It's frustrating, and it's a time waster to boot. And there's just, whether you have goals set up or not, there's no reason to waste any time. You should be enjoying as much time as you can. And my Capricorn grandmother was the one that told me you can enjoy things once you get things done, right? And once everything is done, you can relax. And she's absolutely true. She's absolutely right about that, because I'm the opposite. I'm sitting there, I'll put that off till later. I'll put that off till later. I'll put that off till later. And while I'm relaxing, I'm thinking about it all the time. And you want to eliminate that because you never properly relax. Oh, that was a whole lot. So that's what I have for you, my friend. And we are going to move on to Connie. I am totally cracking up here because I wish that I could show you, but I can't. But I'm looking at my computer monitor here, and there's these ears on the other side of it, these little kitty ears. He's been very ornery this week with my video recording, and he's been doing a whole lot of walking back and forth here. So it's been pretty funny. I do want to share with you, I haven't named my mummy girl yet. A name hasn't come to me yet. I haven't named her yet. And I took her out of the box and I put her down on the floor because the cat was there. And I put her down on the floor and I said, Emrys, look. And he was like totally freaked out by this thing and wouldn't even, was just like frozen there for a good few seconds, and then finally like came up enough to sniff it. But the whole time he was sniffing her, he was looking at me like, what is going on here? So it was really funny. Now she's up. You've seen it. I sent you a picture. She's up where he can't get her. He has not attempted to get up there yet. So I don't really see how he can. So that's good. And she's perfectly safe. I even made sure that that there was something in front of her too, to protect her from earthquakes, because in the Bay Area we are in earthquake country. So that's my little snippet. Remind me to tell you the funny story about receiving the package, because it really was hilarious. We'll talk about that later. Good news. Good news. The stupid Venus retrograde is over. Oh my God. It's not even in Aquarius. And I started feeling it, boom, a week before, literally 7 days before it happened. It's been one thing after another for me. I can't imagine. Well, I don't have to. We've talked almost every single week during the Venus retrograde. It has been crazy for you. It's true. I will admit that. And yes, we are heading out of that. So a Venus shadow period is probably about a couple of weeks. There really isn't a set time period. So it is about a couple of weeks on either side where things could be a little bit wonky, but I don't see it getting quite as crazy as it has been getting crazy. I mean, the craziness it did get pretty bad there. Focuses on long-term goals. Venus moving back into a direct position brings your creative juices flowing again, where it seemed that they were stifled in some way in terms of that energy going towards your long-term goals. Kitty Tail, telling you, he's been ornery this whole time. He must be being affected by the Mercury retrograde. So that's a good thing. And Venus continues to be in a square with Jupiter. Now, this is actually kind of funny. I've been telling everybody about it because it makes me laugh, right? The way people communicate things, it's like when you're looking on your phone and you see an article, and it's like, what did this person do, right? And you're like, oh my God, what did they do? And you want to go read the article, right? And then it's like 15 pages of their entire backstory to find out that they didn't do anything, right? And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. There's been posts going around, 6 planets in retrograde. Oh my God, our whole entire world is going to be chaotic. Not the first time, first of all, that we've had 6. We've had 7 planets. 7 is the limit of planets that can go retrograde because the sun and the moon don't, right? So we've had all 7 retrograde before, and yeah, we didn't die. Obviously, we're here. Maybe some people did, but we didn't. We're still here. We survived it. But the funny thing about it is that today Venus goes direct, one of those 6, right? And around the same time, Jupiter goes retrograde. So technically, we have 6 retrograde planets for a handful of hours today, maybe. And then we go back down to the 5 that we have currently right this minute. So yeah, okay. Never believe what they say, first of all. Always look into it, because you never know. I think a lot of people, and to me, retrogrades are not like the worst thing in the world. They do cause a lot of complications. The way I just described it earlier in the video was like, you have goals and you set these goals and you get to a point in your goals where it stops and you can't go any further. And that's that frustrating point where you really have to work a little bit harder, right? But actually, rather than work a little bit harder, it's actually a chance to look backwards and where you've been. Make sure that everything that you set out to do is done. Your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. And once that's done, the planet moves direct and you can move forward. That's exactly what it's just a checkpoint. It's just a look back at you to make sure that you're doing what you set out to do, basically. So with all of that being said, the funny part really is that Venus and Jupiter are squared. So one's going direct and one's going retrograde with a challenge with each other. And that challenge has actually been there for a while. It's not something that just started. So, and the challenge here is Jupiter's focus is really on your day-to-day schedule. So a lot of what this means is that Jupiter's energy is all about expansion. When we retrograde that, it means we can't find time. We go from all kinds of time to seeming like we have no time. Now, this is the point, always the point where people go, oh, well, I never have time to do what I want to do, so I'm just not going to do it, right? That's not the lesson, okay? That's never the lesson. The lesson is always to, okay, take a break or find a way around it or figure out what it is that you're missing or what have you. We also have a sextile with Mars. Venus moves into a sextile with Mars towards the end of the week and kind of sticks with it there throughout the rest of the week. I love when Mars and Venus work together. They're the quintessential masculine, feminine energies. So it's bringing those two things together in a way where they can work together. So I've always had this thing about equality between men and women. I mean, obviously equal pay. Yes, obviously we should be treated the same in every single avenue, whether it's medical, whether it's business, what have you. And we're still not 100% there. It's true. But to say that the two are absolutely 100% equal, that's what I don't agree with. Because men or masculine energy is stability. It's, well, the energy is, okay? They're not always stable, but it's logical. It's stable. It's, it's going through the proper business process. Whereas feminine is creative. It takes that proper business process and it makes it beautiful. It's a little bit more emotional. We add meaning to it. We're not equal. We're two different things that when you put them together, it creates this wonderful magical thing, right? Whether it's physical or energetic, it creates this beautiful magical thing, right? So I love it when the two are working together in terms of astrology, because you're bringing those two elements together in a way that is helpful for you. Mars energy is on your support system. This is actually kind of interesting for you, because this is really looking for the type of support that you really don't necessarily look for. You have enough aggressive, difficult relationships to go out of your way to find somebody who is aggressive. It's probably not going to be your first choice. However, in terms of these long-term goals, that may be exactly what you need. It's a Frankie. She's here. It's a Frankie. Frankie may have been a woman, but she was aggressive when it came to making money and getting what she wanted. And so this aggressive support sometimes is exactly what we need to get us moving in the right direction, if that makes sense, towards our goals. I feel this has something to do with work, of course, and it may be with the company that you're working for. It may be looking into another avenue of making some money where the person that you meet with or interview with, the energy doesn't necessarily resonate with you right off the bat, but there's something about it that keeps you from just walking away from it. And that's your intuition telling you, you may not like this personality, but this personality is exactly what you need to move forward, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week. Lots, I want to say things are looking up from here. That does not mean that there's no more difficulties and there's no more challenges, and somehow your family is either going to completely change or disappear. Okay. That's not going to happen. But I do see things calming down and not being quite so crazy. With Mercury still being retrograde into next week, that is going to cause some complications. Make sure that you are aware of the issue and you try to make sure that when you communicate, you're communicating in a way that doesn't leave any loose interpretations from other people, if that makes sense. You can't completely and totally avoid that 100%, but you can avoid it for the most part. So if you can avoid it as much as possible, that's better than not avoiding it at all. Okay, so that's what I have for you. And I'm moving on to Jenny. So I'm recording today on Sunday, and Venus's retrograde is over today. Thank goodness for that. I am not a Leo, okay? And I felt that playing out a week, literally 7 days before it started. It's been one effed up thing after another since then. So it's been about 2 months now. I'm kind of like, oh, thank goodness, because yeah, there's just been some crazy stuff going on with that. And it just seems to get kind of crazier, if that makes sense. So that's over with, which is good. Venus is still in a square with Jupiter. Oddly enough, Jupiter's going retrograde on the same day today that Venus is going direct. So it's the kind of passing each other, even though they're way far away from each other. And Jupiter's all about expansion and growth and focused on your day-to-day schedule. So this does kind of create a problem where you're trying to focus on specific goals, but you just don't have time to do it. Jupiter is all about growth and expansion. In retrograde, focused on your day-to-day schedule, it means you couldn't add a fart into your schedule. There's just so much stuff going on, and that may be really frustrating. However, Venus's retrograde is over. So a little bit of creativity goes a really long way in terms of how you establish that time. So for instance, to use myself as an example, I don't have time to write. Oh, so many times. Okay. But you know what? I stay up pretty late playing on my phone. I could be on my laptop writing at that time. So it's about getting creative with my schedule and making sure that I'm not wasting time in my schedule, unless that time is scheduled to be wasted, because we do need that from time to time as well. So I want to say, it's good to get creative, but you want to make sure that you have room in there to just breathe also. Self-care is always important. Mercury is moving into a sextile with Mars later on this week as well. And that's actually very interesting. I love when Mars and Venus, I said Mercury earlier, I meant Venus. This happens to me a lot. Venus and Mars are in a sextile, and I love when Venus and Mars work together. They're the quintessential masculine and feminine energies. So it's the energies that each one brings and using them together. So you have your regular business sense of the progression of the way things need to be in order to be successful. That is the masculine logical. And then you bring in the feminine creative, which comes in and says, okay, we have the process down. Now let's make it pretty. Now let's add some magic to it. Now let's create something that can be helpful towards the world or whatever. I love when they're working together. With Venus's creativity continuing to be focused on your long-term goals, Mars brings his energy into your support system. And this is a very energetic and possibly aggressive support. So it may be a little bit like, I don't know. But sometimes, and for some goals, this is exactly what you need. And for some of us are not aggressive personalities, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're not aggressive personalities, we need to have an aggressive personality come in to help us out. Just like I needed a bookkeeper because I didn't know what I was doing, and it would be detrimental to my business if I didn't have one. It's the same concept. It's not just about making money, and it's not just about your business. Sometimes you need an advocate. And I feel like this is what this is, or this is what's coming in, is this advocate or whatever is going on, if that makes sense. So good things. We are still in that Mercury retrograde, of course, until Friday next week. And then, of course, we have a week-long shadow period. So that isn't going away. Weird. That's the first time I've done that. That isn't going away, unfortunately, anytime soon. So, of course, you have to have extra patience with that still, because it is still a thing and it is still making people crazy. And oh my God, it's making people crazy. Like, I I've seen so much crazy lately. It's not even funny. So that's what I have for you, my friend. And I am going to move on to Linda. We continue to have that Mercury retrograde. And the Sun and Mercury move into conjunction with each other about midweek. So right there in the exact same place. Oh my gosh. Okay, I did just yawn the first time with the last one. Weird. Okay. I know this happened last week. Let me just mm, okay. So yes, midweek, both planets in conjunction, which means they're really, really, really working together. And all of this energy is going towards your career. Um, which is awesome. This is where all that energy needs to go right now. And I see things happening very quickly, almost so quickly that, 1 minute, like we talked a week ago, and it was sort of like, I'm hoping that this gets put in place. I don't think it's going to happen soon. All of a sudden, it's going to go from not moving to boom, 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 boom. Let's go, right? Mercury retrograde or not. And the good news is that looking at this, these two planets are not in opposition with anybody. They are in a square with the moon one day. And that's really the difficulty that they're having with other planets. The moon's focus is on relationships. And this is actually kind of funny and interesting, funny in an ironic way, because when hasn't your drive to be successful in making money and in your business not in some way affected your relationships, I mean, I've seen it kind of, here and there, and the relationship with you and your son-in-law and all of these different things. There's always somebody that has an opinion that is against what you're doing. And I know for a fact that this isn't the first time that this has come up. So I know that this is not something that is going to be a big deal for you, because it doesn't matter what other people think about what you're doing. You need to do it. And I kind of think the first thing that comes to my mind is the conversation that you had with your daughter about the amount of time that you spent with your husband, and how that just didn't make any sense to them. Well, that wasn't their relationship. It's your relationship. That's how the two of you have always worked together. So, she just doesn't understand, and her relationship is different. She sees her relationship as different. So that's kind of what I'm feeling is coming out of that, if that makes sense. The Sun and Mercury is trine with, it is Jupiter. With Jupiter is also kind of interesting because Jupiter is retrograde as of the beginning of the week, moves into retrograde position, will be retrograde for several months, focused on your day-to-day schedule, of which you probably don't have a lot of time to begin with. And Jupiter, being all about growth and expansion, is now retrograde, saying just that. There isn't room to put anything in this schedule at all. So when new things come up, or a new opportunity or something that you just can't say no to, it's going to be very difficult to move things around in order to accommodate it. So my whole thoughts on that are, this is an opportunity for you to take a look at what you're doing and decide what's the most important right now. And obviously you and your self-care being on that schedule is really important. But I feel like that's going to be less of an issue because you have time to yourself. And having that time to yourself is really important because you're not taking care of anybody else. You're just taking care of you. The problem is there's nobody to complain that you're working too much either. And you could literally work through the night. I know you. And that's not necessarily going to be good for you either. So I'm looking at creative ways to balance your schedule, but I'm also looking at doing an inventory of what's on your schedule to make sure that what it is that you are doing is the most important things that you should be focused on, and sort of eliminating the things that are not quite as important, if that makes sense. So we are going to continue in that Mercury retrograde through next Friday, and then it moves direct. We have a week after that, where we're in a shadow period, and that's it. That's the last one of the year. I think it's the retrograde for the first retrograde for next year is going to start a few days before the end of the year, but I mean, we have basically the rest of the year to be Mercury retrograde free, which is nice. Being a Virgo, Mercury is your ruling planet, so it affects you deeply every time it happens. The fact that it's in Virgo now affects you even more. One more thing that is sort of just popping up in my head here, and that is miscommunication. That is an individual who continues to say, nobody told me that. I didn't hear that. And it's going to be so difficult for you not to call them out on the carpet for what they're doing. And you can. Just make sure you do it diplomatically. I think that will work better in your favor. That's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Matalyn, we continue to have Mercury retrograde in Virgo through this week into next week. It ends on Friday next week, and then we have a week-long shadow period. So the following Friday is when we're really out of the clear of this Mercury retrograde. And as we move into the middle of the week, the Sun and Mercury move into a perfect conjunction with each other. Like they're literally in the same place from our viewpoint, which from our viewpoint would mean that we couldn't see Mercury at all because it's right in front of the Sun, basically. Not that we can see the planets during the day anyways. But they're working together towards your career. And I find this actually very interesting because usually Mercury retrogrades are not the best time to be making career choices or decisions, big decisions specifically. But at the same time, I feel like those decisions may be coming up this week. And so even though it's Mercury retrograde, you don't want to go, oh, I can't make this decision because it's Mercury retrograde, because you may not be able to make the decision a second time. You may not get the offer a second time. So there's a couple of things really that could play into that. There's not a whole lot of negative aspects for these planets this week. In fact, they're lining up with, in a trine with Jupiter, which is focused on your day-to-day schedule, and Jupiter is retrograde. So I'm sure you've heard other people, I'm sure you've heard me say it a million times. Because I do say it a million times. I'm notorious for saying, I don't have time. Sorry, I don't have time. I don't have time. Oh my God, I'm so busy. I don't have time, which is a lie. Actually, I have all kinds of time. I just don't want to give it to some people, no, or I just don't want to give up that time that day or what have you. Honestly, I do make time for me time, or learning time, or just quiet writing time, whatever. For you, that would be your guitar time. You're making time with your friends. You're making time with all these things. And so it seems like you may not have time, but you need to balance between, is this a good move for me financially and my responsibilities? Or is it really not going to make a change, just take up all my time? So rather than shutting it down right off the bat, take some time to think about it and see if it's something that you could do, or can you negotiate? If they want to give you a promotion at work, okay, let's negotiate a price. Let's negotiate how much time I'm willing to spend here. Let's negotiate the hours that I want to work. And let's negotiate the hours that I refuse to go over, so that the place doesn't necessarily take advantage of you because you're a manager, okay? But at the same time, getting a promotion at your age, it's not impossible, but it's a great learning curve, if that makes sense, because it gives you the good and the bad, and every situation has good and bad, so my whole thing on it is that does the good outweigh the bad? And as long as the good outweighs the bad, I'm going to be successful, or it's a good decision to make, or the relationship is definitely a good relationship, because there's always going to be some bad. As long as the good outweighs the bad, everything is fine. It's when the bad outweighs the good that it becomes a problem. So that's one thing. We do have the sun and Mercury moving into a square with the moon on right at the beginning of the week, actually, right when the two planets are conjunct with each other, actually. And the moon's focus is on relationships. Here you are trying to focus on your career goals, and somebody comes in, probably close to you, could be a friend, could be a boyfriend, could be your parents, could be your family, right? And infiltrates that and comes in and says, that is so not a good idea. I don't like that idea. For whatever reason, they don't like that idea. Two things about that. One, that could be their own motives talking. Like, for example, your boyfriend doesn't want you to take more time away from him because you have a job. Now, I'm not even going to have an opinion for that, because it's not going to be a good one. I'll just shut my mouth, okay? That could be something along those lines. It could be your friend who doesn't want to see you progress successfully quicker than she does. That kind of stuff happens. But it could also be your parents who are concerned that you're working till midnight, and they're concerned about you being in a store by yourself until midnight, which is a valid concern. So it could be a lot of things. My point here is that I see a lot of people posting on Facebook asking, if I decide I'm thinking of doing this, if I did, would you guys purchase it? Or what would you guys think? Or blah, blah, blah. You never base your decision on what everybody else thinks, because they're not always going to help you come up with a decision that's best for you. Okay. Some of them will, and some people will at certain times, and they won't at other times. So it's just a good idea to make sure that you are super picky and choosy about who you are connecting with on that level, or who you are asking that question of to get that advice. But take it with a grain of salt at the same time, so that you're not necessarily putting yourself in a position to where everybody is against this idea. And because everybody is against it, you're against it now too. So that's what I have for you, darling. Remember, Mercury retrograde, lips shut. I think sometimes the best thing when I have a plan is to just not tell anybody, for two reasons. One, because I don't need the negative feedback. Well, sometimes I do. But I don't really need the negative feedback. People who post on Facebook, I've been thinking about doing lives. What would you guys think? Would you guys rather I do? These people are basing what they're going to do on what everybody else says. And a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, and I will totally pay for that, and I will totally participate. And then they disappear and they don't. So it's taking the control out of your own hands is what it is. And you have to have control over your life as much as you possibly can. Because we can't have control over everything, right? The other thing is, as soon as I say this is what I'm going to do, I don't do it. I don't know what it is. And I'm not saying that you're like that either, but I am more successful at following through when I don't tell people what I'm going to do. When I'm done with it and I put it out there and say, boom, this is what's going to happen, I'm definitely more successful that way. So keep that in mind in case that's a thing, then you know to identify what that thing is. Love you, darling. And I am moving on to Glennis. Mars in Libra. Been married to a Libra. I'm a little bit scared. I'm not going to lie. And oddly enough, there was some aggression about a week before Mars hit Libra, so I think he felt that it was coming and sort of released it at the beginning, and I'm hoping that that's all, we don't need anymore. But I may be hoping for something that's absolutely impossible at the same time as well, because honestly, for his own lessons, maybe he needs to get aggressive. I just don't want it in my direction. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to be there when it happens. Focus is on those that support you this week. Mars is in a trine with Pluto, which turns into a grand trine when the moon moves into place about Tuesday. The moon's focus is on relationships. That kind of gives us a clue as to where that aggression is coming from. And Pluto's focus is on the mind and how the mind works and how you think about things. What's interesting about this to me is, I don't know if you know this or not, but I am an angry person. There is still a lot of anger in there, right? And I feel like most of us that have dealt with traumatic situations are like that. We are just full of anger that we haven't really worked through, which is unfortunate. It makes things very, very challenging for us. It's also a lot of energy being put out that we don't necessarily have as we get older. But I feel like what's really happening here is it's more of an anger towards the support that you're not getting, if that makes sense. And this kind of feels to me like one of those situations. It's so hard to get out of this mindset too. It really is. And I have to talk myself through it over and over and over again, because it's just not going to change, and it is what it is, right? I feel like the more I'm angry and lashing out against it, the less I'm going to get what I want. And that's always what happens. But in terms of support, when you have been there for your children and have done everything that you possibly can for them, and then all of a sudden you need help and they're like, oh, but I'm so busy and I have this to do and I have that to do, and they're just not there. It's frustrating and it's angry, and it's like, what was the point of having you little brats if you're gonna do this to me? It is very frustrating when that happens. And yet it continuously happens. It never stops happening because they are not looking at what we did, and they probably won't until they have to do it for their own children, and their own children have to grow up and be adults before they realize what they did to you, and they won't fully realize it until you're long gone anyway. It's a vicious cycle, right? I feel getting angry is not necessarily going to help you out. What will help you out is a gentle, diplomatic Libra reminder that, sometimes your parents need assistance, and we've done everything that we possibly can to help you, not because we want that reciprocated, but because that's the right thing to do. And I'm asking you to do the right thing here, because that's what needs to happen. The other thing is, if this one isn't working, move on to the next one. Make it easier on yourself. The more emotional you get and the more angry you get, the less able you are to focus on a resolution to the problem, whether you get help or not anyways. So I feel like, I also want to say that there's an element of one person in your family very close to you who does have some aggressive or anger issues, if that makes sense. That might be also part of this problem, if that makes sense. We do have Mars in opposition with Neptune. And this opposition is going to create a little bit of a challenge. Neptune is retrograde, all about intuition and your intuitive abilities. Focus on the home, and in opposition with Mars. So I feel like any kind of difficulties that come up around Mars being there, and this, Mars can be like this wonderful burst of energies. Like somebody lights a fire under your butt and you're like, boom, cleaning the whole house like you did drugs or something like that. But it can also burn you up really quick too. So you want to make sure that you're not overdoing it, because I feel like there is that possibility. In fact, it's highly possible, and this is what I want you to really be aware of. It is highly possible that you get that burst of energy, that you just want to run around the house and organize this and do that, and you hurt yourself in the process because you're going too fast. And then you're going to need the help. And then the whole thing happens all over again. Why not ask for help to do a specific project first so that you can eliminate all that other stuff from happening? That might be the easier thing to do. And remember, when you're communicating, Mercury is still retrograde. It will continue to be retrograde through this week. So communication and the way that you communicate is absolutely vital. This particular retrograde is in Virgo. There's a lot of narcissistic tendencies that come out of the sign of Virgo. Not all Virgos are narcissists, but it is the sign that's all about me and what I want. And this Mercury retrograde is bringing up all kinds of communication about that. It's all about me, all about me, well, all about me. The problem is that our reaction to that is, oh yeah, well, what about me? Have you stopped to think about me in the last? It really is frustrating. And I have had to bite my tongue at least 2 or 3 times a day, every day throughout this whole Mercury retrograde process, because that kind of thing just frustrates the hell out of me. It really does. And I feel like sometimes it frustrates me the most because of what I do. I mean, I put myself in the position of, it's not about me, it's about you guys. And I'm fine with that. But when it gets to a point where I'm not fine, it's like, does anybody give a crap about what's with me at all? And this Mercury retrograde definitely plays into that a little bit. So actually, I think it's not so much that I'm asking my clients that, but my family would be nice. It would be nice every once in a while. Mom, what can I help you with? Not getting it. I'm just saying, I'm not getting it. So don't burn yourself out. Manage your anger. You're not an angry person. In fact, I will always remember a time when I was angry and I was spewing that anger out on Facebook. And you sent me a message and said, this isn't who my friend is. And I know this isn't who my friend is. And I'm not telling you what to do, but I am saying that this isn't who you are. And first of all, it was the perfect way to tell me that, because I literally went, oh, right. And I stopped. Now, if you had come in and said, knock that off right now, I'd have been like, who the, right? It was the perfect way to say it. And Libras are beautiful with the diplomatic way that they say things to make sure that there isn't a problem. But some of them are perfect diplomats outside of the home. When it comes to inside of the home, they're overly critical. They criticize everything. So you want to make sure, and you're married to a half Libra too on top of it. So you want to make sure that that is not the case as much as possible this week, just to smooth things over so they don't get too complicated. So that's what I have for you, my friend. I'm going to take a little mini break here and then come back and finish up the reading. Okay, we are moving on to Regina. Oh, I'm so excited to share this with you, actually, because I think on my list, you might be the only one that would be excited about it. But on Friday, I got to meet and hang out a little bit with Viv Savage of Spinal Tap. Okay. And if I hadn't been told that he was Viv Savage of Spinal Tap, I never would have known, because he's just a sweet old English man now. I mean, he even kissed me on the cheek when he left and was just the sweetest man that ever walked the face of the planet. And I could not just imagine him being in Spinal Tap. But of course, you know, that was a long time ago and things are different now. And it was definitely a lot of fun. He was a sweetheart of a guy for sure. So I don't know if you're going to get excited about that, but I thought I'd share it with you. Because we got really nothing going on in Scorpio this week, which is well, it is what it is. Focus continues to be on self and self-care, and development of self. There's so many different things about ourselves that I feel like we either ignore or we don't see, or we just choose not to develop or work on. I've been on a spiritual journey now for a while, the self-development journey now for quite a while. I'm like hiccuping or something. I don't think that helped. Okay. I've been on a spiritual self-development, personal development journey for quite a while now, honestly. And there are still just certain things that I know are a problem, and I'm like, I'll fix it later. You know, I think that we all do that to a certain extent. You know, we work through the things that are fairly easy to work through, and we leave the difficult stuff for later. And one of the things that I've learned recently through the Venus retrograde, which is over today, which I'm happy about, even though it wasn't in my sign, it was a doozy for me, that's for sure. You know, the Venus retrograde, going through the Mercury retrograde, those things that I just decided I was going to put on the back burner are like, okay, we're front and center now, lady, deal with it, kind of a thing. And that's been very frustrating, because it's not just one thing, it's like one thing after another. And it has been one thing after another for about 2 months, and I'm kind of fingers crossed that things are going to, you know, just simmer down just a little bit. I mean, for crying out loud, you know, how much can one person take? Well, we ask ourselves that all the time, and the truth is that I've taken a lot in my life. I have a sneaking suspicion that you've taken a lot in your life too. And the good news is that we're still going, we're still ticking, we're still, every single day is an opportunity to do a little bit better. And opening up with that party with Viv Savage from Spinal Tap, believe it or not, I'm not a very sociable person. I do socialize. I'm not a hermit, but I tend to be more of a hermit type energy, because I prefer myself to other people. You know, it's just kind of one of those things. I prefer my own company to other people's company. Now, I do like hanging out with people from time to time, but I really need to put myself into the mindset of, this is what I'm doing today. And so one of the ways that I work through that is I find myself a function in the party, something that, first of all, makes me socialize with people, but for a specific reason, right? So I did give Viv Savage a cup of coffee, and we have a slushy machine, and I ran the slushy machine. And to me, that's just one way that it gives me a function, and it gives me something to do while I socialize. And they're coming to me. That's the key thing there, right? I don't have to go to them and try and start a conversation. They're coming to me, and we're conversing over what we're doing there, and they ask questions and I answer them and such and such. So working here at the studio really helps with that, because you have to be social all the time, because there's various different people coming in and out of here at various different times. And in many cases, there's some musicians that are fairly well-known musicians. So he's not the first one to come through here, and he probably won't be the last. So that also helps to take me out of that gushy, what's the word I'm looking for? Wannabe groupie mode, I guess. That makes any sense at all. It kind of doesn't, but it does in a way. So that I don't embarrass myself. The thing is with social, it's not people, okay? I love people. I love socializing with people. My problem is I'm an Aquarius. The mouth opens and whatever just happens to come into my head falls out. And I am always afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to say something and people are going to take it in the wrong way, if that makes sense. So I try really hard to just make sure that I'm socializing for a reason, and that helps me. But to just sit there and enjoy the party, I can't do that, you know. In any case, I feel like for you this week, that's really what this is all about. Not necessarily socializing, although if that's a thing for you, then absolutely. But also just looking at the things, you know, we all have those things that are about ourselves that get on our own nerves from time to time, you know. And I feel like fixed signs tend to be hermits anyways, more than the other modes, because they just want to be left alone most of the time to do what they do. And I feel that that is something that may be coming up for you. And while you're happy doing that, you're not happy doing that at the same time. You can tell yourself you're happy, but it turns out maybe not. So this week is a really good opportunity to just sort of take an inventory of that, take an inventory of those things that maybe you wish were different, and take yourself out of the wish part. You have complete control over that. You can change that whenever you need to and whenever you want to. And if it is about socializing and being social, it's a scary thing to go out there into the world and find a bunch of people to go and talk to that you don't know, especially when you're by yourself. It's always easier to take an extremely social friend that can talk to everybody and then just kind of sort of go from there. I'm not that friend. FYI, I'm not that friend. I could be if I had to, I suppose, but generally I am not that friend. One thing that I did do many years ago, though, because it became really difficult to work from home all the time. It became really, as much as I love being in front of the camera and not dealing with, you know, people in front of me in general, it became necessary. You can't run a business constantly without being public in some way. And so it came to a point where I really needed to get out. And I had been in the place that I live for a really long time. And I hadn't really socialized a lot. I hadn't really met a lot of new people. My husband's out there meeting people left and right. Most of them are quote unquote stray dogs that I'd rather he didn't bring home. But I'm very selective. In case you didn't know, I'm extremely selective with the people that come to my house and the people that I exchange energy with, because every conversation is energy. And that's partially why we are introverts or antisocial people, because we're being selective. That doesn't mean that you can't socialize with somebody that is not on the same energy level as you are, or that you don't necessarily agree with, if that makes sense. The world is a scary place. Everybody is fighting with each other, but really they're all fighting on social media. In terms of like face to face, they're generally not fighting as much as you think they are. But in any case, the point of the whole story here is that I stumbled on a group for Modesto of women that were professionals for the most part, but they wanted to develop a women's group where we just got together. It was just women. We talked about women's stuff. We talked about various different things. So it wasn't just business. It was gardening. It was time management, it was organization, it was all kinds of really cool stuff, right? And the socialization part of it was literally like the first 30 minutes, and the rest of it was basically sitting and listening to whoever was speaking at the time. So it gave me a certain amount of time that I had to be social, and then I would pick a table with people that I kind of knew a little bit that would help me continue to be social throughout the dinner part and all that stuff. And then I became part of the nonprofit, and that gave me a function, which made it a lot more easier for me to be social, because now I had a reason to go up and talk to these people. So you see where I'm going with this? That's actually where I learned that trick, believe it or not. I also have to say this because it's kind of funny, but I have 3 boys, married. I have 3 boys. The testosterone in my house is literally dripping down the walls. Okay. And I have a lot of friends that are guys and a few really kick-ass girlfriends, right? But most of my energy is spent with men. So to walk into a room with 100 women, that was a whole lot of estrogen. That was really overwhelming the first time. But I kind of sort of got used to it, if that makes sense. And I really am grateful for it, actually, because I really needed that experience, and I really needed that lesson in the fact that, I tended to avoid female relationships because there are a lot of drama, and realize that not all of them are like that. Apparently just the ones that I had known before that I didn't keep as friends, if that makes sense. So I feel like this week is really just, there's no pressure or anything like that. It's like, okay, so I would like to change this. What can I put into place that can help me get from where I am now to where I would like to be in as comfortable a way as possible? I mean, it's not going to be completely comfortable. You're going outside of your comfort zone. So it's not completely comfortable. But if you can find a way to do it in as comfortable a way as possible, it does make things a little bit easier. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Theresa, there is no planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on self. It's all about you this week, or I should say it continues to be all about you this week. I have to say there's a couple of things popping up around that. Number one, I do see that you've been under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure lately. So this week, when you find that you have a little bit of time on your schedule, don't feel bad about spending that time on you, whether it's going to the salon or to a spa day or just locking yourself in your room and reading a good book all day, whatever it is that you need. To kind of regroup and refocus and unplug and plug back in, if that makes sense. Because I feel like the stress that you're going through has to do with certain things that are going on in your life. It's true. You do have a lot going on. But it also feels like you haven't had a break. You just go, 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 go. And when you come home, and that should be your break, it's not, because you clock out of work and then you clock in as soon as you get home, which is fine, but it's draining you. And it's not like you're getting sick or weakened by it or anything, but it's overly tiring. You need a day to literally relax. And that's one of the first things, actually, that I'm being shown for you. The other thing that's coming up is I feel like I sort of feel like this is an opportunity for you to really show your stuff, if that makes sense. And when I say that, what I mean is a lot of times we go through life and we do a great job and nobody notices. I know that's called being a mom, okay? But I also feel that this has to do with work as well. It's like, and it's not like you require somebody to go, oh my God, Theresa, you're wonderful every time you do something. But it does start to become energetically draining when it feels like either everything that you do isn't good enough, or everything you do is just being missed, if that makes sense. And I feel like an opportunity is coming up for you this week to step out of that a little bit. Like what you have been doing is being noticed, whether they've said anything or not, it is being noticed. And I feel like you might get a little glimmer of that, if not the whole shebang, this week. So good stuff. I want to say this is really good stuff for you. We are still in a Mercury retrograde. There is always going to be those complications, but I don't feel like these complications are coming up a lot for you. In fact, I think this Mercury retrograde, in terms of travel, in terms of communication, there's been a couple of bumps here and there, but for the most part, it's actually been a pretty easy ride for you, or a pretty smooth sailing one, I should say, which is really, really good. So that's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Jillian, no planets in Scorpio. Focus is still on self. So that means it's still all about you and what you're accomplishing and what you're doing and all the wonderful and fun stuff that may be. Some days it feels like you're not doing enough. Actually, most days it feels like you're not doing enough. And life does feel a lot of the time like you're stuck in quicksand, just chasing your tail, trying to get out of a mess that it seems impossible to get out of. Two things really come up with that. First of all, first things first, I know that moving, getting a place is a big deal for you guys. Now, and of course, having the stability and the money and all that stuff definitely needs to happen. And I kind of see that you guys are on the right track to that. But the place, the expense, oh my God, it's going to be so expensive. How are we going to be able to afford it? Your boyfriend comes from someplace outside of California. Everything is going to be ridiculously expensive to him. And it's okay, Andrew, if you're listening, it's okay. Anybody that comes from outside of California looks at it in the exact same way, right? You being in California have been hearing from everybody how expensive it is your whole entire life, right? And, watching your grandparents struggle trying to take care of you guys, and watching this and watching that. And, it really, you get to a point where all you can think about is, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to be able to afford this. I'm never, 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 never. Let me tell you what I just found out. Here in the Bay Area, the most expensive place to live in California, next to Southern California, I should say. And I am in the cheaper part of the Bay, okay? But I've been looking at places because we are moving back out here. It is going to happen. We are moving back out here eventually. I'm looking at the rents and they're going down. Okay. And funny thing, but my friend Sharon, or Aunt Sharon, is absolutely adamantly against me moving out here. And so she finds the most expensive rental, okay, the $12,000 a month for this house, right? And she's like, I don't know how you're going to be able to afford that. And I was like, did you not look at the rest of them? I mean, come on. That's like the one $12,000 a month house in Fremont. That's just ridiculous, right? They're not all like that. In fact, I'm finding little studio apartments here that are totally affordable, right? That are expensive compared to what they were 20 years ago, but I'm not looking at that. Okay, because that's I'm going to shoot myself in the foot and go, I can't afford that. That's not how I'm looking at it. Instead, I'm looking at it as, oh, okay, that is something that I can afford. And you don't need a whole big house, Sometimes a little studio apartment, you got your little kitchen, you got your bathroom, you got a place for the two of you to be in and be completely by yourself. That's all you need. So this week really, really, really is about changing that mindset towards what you can accomplish, not the two of you, but what you can accomplish. I probably said it to you. I said it to your sister. She didn't listen. I've said it to Matalyn. I've said it to every single young lady that I can think of. Never put yourself in the position to financially rely on anybody. You could have the best man on the planet. I do have the best man on the planet, and I still can't always financially rely on him. And if something happens to him today, I'm pretty much screwed. So you don't want to put yourself in that position, not because there's something wrong with your relationship or something wrong with your boyfriend, because we both know that he's perfect. I know he's not. I mean, there is no perfect person. I get it. But he is, I mean, literally, you hit the jackpot there, girl. I'm telling you. Because a lot of men are just not stable. And this one is a lot more stable than most of the young men his age that I have seen outside of my own children. So you hit the jackpot on that. But make sure that you're taking care of you. And yes, it's hard. It's not easy to do. And it's not easy to stop doing that, to take a long break, to take care of children and raise them, and then try and get back into that. It's almost impossible, okay? Because apparently being a stay-at-home parent means that you sat on your ass all that time, which is not true. I did not sit on my ass. So I want to say this is a good week for you to evaluate your mindset. Mercury is still retrograde. That is happening. There's going to continue to be frustrations with that, but it's your mindset that controls whether or not you can navigate through these challenges. And life is going to give you one challenge after another, because that's the whole purpose of us being here in the first place, is to navigate through those challenges as successfully as possible. Sometimes we even get repeat challenges because we didn't learn the lesson the first time, or we did learn the lesson the first time, and the universe is like, I'm going to test you to see if you really did learn that lesson. So a life without challenge, people all the time, I hear people all the time, oh yeah, rich people doing rich things, they have no problems, they just have fun because they have all this money. Bullshit. They have a whole different set of problems than we do because they have money. Money doesn't make your life easy. It does make things a little bit more fun, but it does not make your life easy. In some ways, it makes your life even more complicated. So it's the mindset of people who don't have the money that are basically ruling how everybody else who doesn't have money thinks about the people that do have money. Think about that. Those people, chances are they worked really hard to get where they are. They absolutely deserve to enjoy it. So hard work. It is all about hard work. And that's what life is every single day. It's about hard work. But it is also all about how you approach that situation. It's about how you deal with the situation. It's your mindset going into the situation that can determine just how hard that really is. And it doesn't have to be as hard as sometimes we make it. So that's what I have for you, darling. And good luck, because I know you're going to do it. You've done everything so far. I know it's frustrating, but I know you're going to keep doing it. Okay, we are moving on to Peg. Is it Peg? Well, yes, it is Peg. No planets in Sagittarius. Focus continues to be on the past. Okay, two things coming up here for me. First of all, we are still in a Mercury retrograde. So actually not having planets in Sagittarius is not a bad thing. In fact, I don't even think the moon is coming into Sagittarius until after the Mercury retrograde, which is good, because any planets in Sagittarius are going to line up unfavorably with that and just complicate things more than they need to be complicated. And nobody needs that, right? So that is good. So I do see a few little things, delays, miscommunications, frustrations that do pop up because that Mercury retrograde is a thing right now. Again, extra patience is always good. Managing your reaction to things is definitely good because, when you get overreact or overly frustrated, that takes away from your focus. And it also takes away from your energy. And, we both know as we get older, we have less and less. I think I get like every day a little drop leaves, and then every day another little drop leaf, the next day another little drop leaves, So, and the bulk of it were siphoned out by my kids. So in my view, every day that I lose that drop means that I have less energy to put into things that are not productive for me. Now, if this is a day, like I had one of those wonderful days the other day, actually, when I should have been doing this recording, but I didn't because I had the whole place to myself. Everybody was gone, perfect silence. I could just do my thing. I took it. I jumped on that puppy and I took it because we need those days every now and then. And I love those quote unquote time wasting days. I try to have one at least once a week. That's been really hard the past couple of months, but I try to have one at least once a week. And to me, that's not wasting time. That is me unplugging, resting, recuperating, building up my strength so I can plug in and do it some more. So that is not a waste to me. That is a very serious, very important function. Anything else is a time waster. Getting overly frustrated, lashing out is never a good idea during a Mercury retrograde, because if it is a miscommunication, you feel very silly afterwards. And we just don't want to feel silly afterwards, right? I don't want to have to go back and apologize and explain my behavior and all of that stuff. It's so much better if I try to avoid it. And avoiding it sometimes does mean biting my tongue. And I have almost bit it in half a few times in the past few weeks because there's just been so much craziness going on. The Virgo retrograde, one of the things, and I'm bringing this up because I feel like it may be a thing for you too. This Virgo retrograde is bringing out narcissistic behaviors everywhere. I mean, it's just amplifying it. So you already have somebody is a classified narcissist. Well, I'm talking about narcissistic communication patterns and behaviors. Like everybody is just hard on themselves, and they don't care about anybody else because it's all about me, my needs, and making sure that I get my needs met. Because self-care, that's not self-care, by the way. That's pure selfishness, which I'm sure you know, and I don't have to explain to you. So those kind of behaviors, it has been really frustrating lately. And the truth is that if I say anything, it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't fix the situation. Hell, in many ways, it makes the situation worse. So yeah, the more I just stay out of it, the better in some of those situations. But I also feel that this is something that may be coming up for you. I recently had to go through one of those instances with somebody in my life who has a lot of narcissistic tendencies and has been a plague on me my whole entire life. Okay. And pardon me, she was in the hospital and she did very well, actually. She didn't whine, she didn't complain too much. I mean, she got frustrated a couple of times. She had every right to be frustrated. I'm not saying that she should never be frustrated. That's not necessarily true. But she did take one little instance in that week that she was in there to talk about how she didn't want to make dinner anymore. My grandma wasn't eating it anyways and was always critiquing what she was making. And I just don't want to cook anymore and this and that. Well, she's been talking about how she doesn't want to cook for like 25 years. I mean, that's all I've been hearing. So my trigger is, here she goes again, using this situation to emotionally, and my grandma, because she's done that before too, to emotionally manipulate me to do what she wants me to do. right? And in that conversation, I had to take myself out of that, and I had to, okay, yes, my feeling is to immediately lash out and say no, because I don't want to be the victim of that anymore. I don't want to be used by this woman anymore. And yet the reality is that the woman can't cook. She's never been able to cook as long as I've known her, and I've known her my whole life. And it's no wonder my grandma doesn't want to eat the food that she's cooking. And she doesn't have the ability to stand in the kitchen over the stove and cook like she used to. That is true. Just because she has gotten herself to this place, which in my mind, I was like, of course, she's just making herself sicker and sicker and sicker so that I have to take care of her. And there probably is an element of that. But at the same time, I had to step out of my own ego, my own feelings, my own, all of it, and look at what needs to be done. And I was not going to be able to look at what needs to be done until I stepped out of my own ego. Not Venus retrograde in Leo, which is the sign of ego, and Mercury's retrograde in Virgo, which is the sign of narcissism. That's the two of them working together. And it was not an easy thing to go through, but it became much easier when I said, you know what, this isn't about me. This is about what needs to be done. And boom, it was no longer a problem. It was really quite crazy, I have to say, in a very good way, I have to say too. I know she was playing me. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about making sure that everybody is taken care of, because that is my duty in this family, because nobody else is here to do it, right? So sometimes we just have to do that. I feel the whole purpose of me sharing that whole story with you is I feel that something similar is probably going to come up for you this week. And, you know, our feelings want to react immediately. That's the trigger. But when we step out of how we feel and look at the situation, sometimes we realize that it is what it is. You know, I'm not going to put up with her running my schedule anymore like she used to, but I can find ways of being able to help with that without it burdening me too much as well. So, because I'm kind of smart like that. So in any case, that's what I have for you this week. And I'm moving on to Mama Sherri. No planets in Sagittarius. Focus is on the past. I've been seeing you doing a lot of work lately, which I'm very happy about, very proud of. You got your classes going, you've got readings going. I love the questions that you put into your group. And whenever I see one and have time to answer, I do. It's not every day, unfortunately, but or sometimes I do the ones that I'm pulled to and not the one that I'm not, if that makes sense too. But I love that. I love the fact that you're doing that. It gets people discussing the various different things, and it also helps you to understand where they're coming from, just in case you need to work with them. It's brilliant. I love it. I see more of that coming up for you, because the past is in the past. It doesn't mean that you don't miss it, you know, or the people that were in it. It doesn't mean that you know, just because you're not there anymore, it means that you can't function. I see that you're moving past that. You're moving over that hump, which is really, really good. The other thing that I just have to say this, Tabitha doesn't like being called Mookie. Mookie, on the other hand, thinks it's awesome. Okay. But Tabitha doesn't like to be called Mookie. I know it happens a lot. I know it does. And I do it to my own kids. I mean, Daniel was here for a week and I called him Jonathan. I don't know how many times. I'll call Jonathan Daniel, or Mikey. You know, it's something that we do, right? It's just the brain thing. It's just something that we do. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because it was kind of funny. Mookie thinks it's fantastic. So, you know, if she could laugh, she would, which she's in spirit now, so she can. I think she does a lot of that. So that's what I have for you this week. And finally, Alyssa Pieces. Focuses on the home. This week, we still have Saturn in retrograde, ending the week at 2 degrees Pisces, which means it's moving into the cusp of Aquarius, which for me personally, I'm not looking forward to seeing it again. It was a bitch, okay? When it was in Aquarius, it was a bitch. I don't really want to see it again, but you know what? I don't really get a choice either. It is what it is. And we, of course, still have Neptune in Pisces as well. As we kick off in the beginning of the week, both Saturn and Neptune are in an opposition with the Sun and Mercury is still retrograde and will be for the rest of this week into next week. So, first of all, let me just say I'm so glad that Jackson is doing so much better. That, oh my gosh. I mean, my heart sank when I saw that picture. And I first saw it with your mom. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's like not what you guys need at all. I'm so glad that he's doing so much better. And he's a boy, so he'll have a nice little scar to talk about later. I think it's big for them. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be an issue for us, but it's big for them. But both of these planets are in opposition with the Sun and Mercury, which is retrograde. And the Sun and Mercury are focused on career. So this has actually been an issue, which is going to be pretty much, there's like a little break in the middle of the week of it, and then it comes back because of the nature of the movement of the planets. So couple of different things that I'm seeing from that. One is that sometimes it's difficult to handle your responsibilities at home when you're dealing with your work situation. The other thing is, I think that this really is more of a needing to be able to find time to implement new directions in your career because you have some ideas. You have some things that you want to do more so than what you told me about. And so really it's about balancing your time. One thing I think I told you I know about Pisces is that they like to nap like a lot. And I think I understand that really. If you look at the zodiac as a life cycle, Pisces is pretty much on death's door. So you need a lot more naps than anybody else. I get that. But the downside to that with a lot of Pisces that I know is that they take up all of their useful time sleeping or hermitizing themselves, and not enough of that time is going towards their goals. For you, that could be a thing, okay? But I see more as there's outside distractions. You can't focus on what you want, your own personal goals, because somebody is always coming in and distracting you. And it's not necessarily bad distractions either. Your social life is a huge distraction. That's another Pisces thing, by the way, because you guys are very social beings, and that's great. But sometimes you have to put boundaries on things in order to be able to focus on what your goals are, if that makes sense. We continue to have this grand sextile with Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus as well. Uranus is focused on relationships. Pluto is focused on the mind and how the mind works. What's really interesting about this, specifically in terms of what we were talking about, is maybe some of those distractions could actually be really helpful to you. Rather than trying to push on your own and do all of this research on your own, there may be somebody around that may be able to help you out with that. And so instead of them being a distraction, they're actually coming in to help you out. Now, take it from me, okay? When you first start a business, it's rough. You don't know where to market. You don't know how to market. You don't know, you can come up with the idea, but how do you get the word out? There's so many variables. Bookkeeping is a big one. There's so many different variables, and that is scary because you don't know how that's going to play out, and how that's going to work. You don't even know what to do about it in the first place. So it's really important that you find people that are good at these things to help you. It makes a huge difference. I muddled along for the first 5 years on my own, thinking that my job was to do it all by myself. And it wasn't until after that 5 years was up that I realized that's not true. You actually cannot run a successful business by yourself. Okay. And you have to hire out the people to do the things that you're not good at. So bookkeeping was the first one. I hired a bookkeeper, the first one. I love money. I love to make it. I love to spend it. Outside of that, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to pay taxes. I don't know any of that stuff, right? And that's not true. I know how to pay taxes. I don't like to, but I know how to. That's not the point. The point is that by establishing that person, that whole money worry is gone. All I have to do is make it and put it in the right directions. That's it. Per what she tells me, because I found one that was very trustworthy. And yes, I literally spent a year looking for the right person to handle my money because I am a control freak. She's awesome and I love her. If you need one, I will totally send you her number. Okay. It's not just her, it's her office, and they're just amazing. I love them. And actually, I now work with them with 2 businesses because they're that wonderful. I would not give my money to another person. So it's little things like that. It takes all of the big worries of how do I do this and how do I do that. Don't just focus on what you want to create. Give yourself the time to create. That's the most important thing. All the other things that you need to do, put it out there to the universe. This is what I need. They will come when they're ready to come. Okay. And or when they're supposed to come or in the right time, as the universe does. That's what I have for you, darling. That's what I have for everybody this week. So sorry that I am recording on the day that the horoscopes are supposed to be out. And they will be uploaded within the next couple of hours because I have a client coming in about a half an hour. So they will be uploaded by the end of the day. It's crazy time and things just happen. And I'm not making up excuses. I'm just saying life just happens all the time. And sometimes we just cannot do things in the time that we want to do them. That is the hardest lesson for me to wrap my head around and be okay with. It really, truly is. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm Alyssa Bruce, the heavy metal psychic. You all know that. I hope you guys have a wonderful and productive week. I know you will. I know you're going to make it yours. And I'm going to make it mine too, because that's what we're supposed to do. And I will see you next week or on the flip side of this week. You guys have a great week, everybody.